I talked last show how I think the AFC East will be the best division in football this year, and I stand by that. But I think a division that'll be a close second in the NFL this year is the AFC North. Four teams that play tough football and know how to win scrappy games. The Ravens with a revamped offense and a healthy Lamar Jackson. The Burrow-led Bengals with Super Bowl aspirations. The Cleveland Browns, a consistent Deshaun Watson away from being a Super Bowl contender. And then the Pittsburgh Steelers, led by Mike Tomlin, who's never had a losing season as the head coach. Let's go team by team and start with the Ravens. The Ravens absolutely killed it this offseason. They first paid their franchise player and quarterback Lamar Jackson to a 5-year, $260 million contract with $185 million guaranteed. I've always felt that Lamar Jackson has been such a disrespected quarterback in this league, and I'm so happy to see him get his money. This offseason started with rumors of Lamar Jackson never playing for the Ravens again, and/or potentially sitting out until he got his massive contract. Seeing other quarterbacks with his play style, like Kyler Murray and Deshaun Watson, getting fully guaranteed money, he knew he was next up, and I think he made a great decision waiting it out. Lamar Jackson is a better version of Deshaun Watson and Kyler Murray, without any of the off-the-field issues, and trying to bounce back from a torn ACL. Now, the risk with Lamar is obviously his injury problems. He missed the final stretch of last season, including the playoffs. I've also thought that the Ravens have done a very poor job of surrounding Lamar Jackson with proper weapons. But they finally did it this offseason, and oh my goodness, the sky's the limit for this offense. They first went out and signed Odell Beckham Jr. to a 1-year, $15 million contract. Now, at first I didn't think this move was enough, especially for a veteran wide receiver who's coming off a significant ACL tear. But then the Ravens went out and continued to stack this receiver room. They drafted Zay Flowers out of Boston College in the first round, who I believe will win Offensive Rookie of the Year. The Ravens finally surrounded Lamar Jackson with weapons, and now the other pieces on this offense are finally healthy. One of those guys is Lamar Jackson. J.K. Dobbins, their starting running back, has had injury problems since being drafted, and he's finally healthy, and I'm excited to see what he can do for this run game. Another player that's also extremely valuable to this offense, Ronnie Stanley, has also struggled with injury problems, and I'm excited to see him back on the field. On the defensive side of the ball, they went out and signed Rocky Sin this offseason to bolster their secondary. I think the Ravens secondary has a chance to be one of the best in the league, with superstar corner Marlon Humphrey paired with safeties Kyle Hamilton and Marcus Williams. Overall, I think the Ravens are going to have a great year. Without a doubt, they'll make the playoffs, and I can't wait to see what this offense can do. The Ravens have always played a consistent winning style of running the football and playing great defense. I believe now that Lamar Jackson has these weapons across the board with Odell Beckham Jr., Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, and not to mention how great Mark Andrews is, I think Lamar Jackson's going to have an MVP caliber season. Next, let's look at the Bengals. They had a pretty up and down offseason, and the first move that I loved from them was signing former Chiefs tackle Orlando Brown to a 4-year, $64 million contract. We all know that this offensive line has had its ups and downs, but Orlando Brown is a great signing. Now, one of their bigger losses this offseason was losing ball hawk safety Jesse Bates. The departure of Bates leaves this secondary and overall this defense with a lot of question marks. At corner, Chidobe Awuzie is finally healthy after his season-ending injury last year, and the Bengals didn't re-sign Eli Apple, so that puts Cam Taylor-Britt as the cornerback number 2. And he had a great season last year. When Awuzie went down and it was just Apple and Taylor-Britt, Britt made some great plays in coverage and is also an excellent run defender. The Bengals also drafted Dax Hill out of Michigan in the first round last year, so now it's his time to step up. We all know how explosive this offense is. The offensive line seems to be shored up, so there's no reason why this team can't win a Super Bowl. It's going to come down to if this young and inexperienced secondary can step up against some of the top gunslingers in this conference. I believe the Bengals will be one of the best teams in the league this year, but let's look at what the Browns did in the offseason. On the offensive side of the ball, they traded for a very underrated slot receiver in Elijah Moore. They also lost Kareem Hunt in free agency, so now it's Nick Chubb's backfield. Fantasy owners, you can get pretty excited about Nick Chubb this year. On the defensive side of the ball, they did some work. They signed former Chiefs safety Juan Thornhill, and then they grabbed 2 guys off the Vikings defensive line. The first, a good run-stopping D tackle in Dalvin Tomlinson, and the other pickup was trading for edge rusher Zadarius Smith. This defense is flat out elite. They don't have any holes, and they're led by their Defensive Player of the Year candidate Myles Garrett. They can stop the run, they can get after the passer, and they have a very solid secondary. They also have linebackers like J.O.K. and Anthony Walker who can fly around. But the Browns' success is going to come down to what this offense can do, and I believe it has the potential to be unstoppable. This Browns run game has flat out carried this offense the last few seasons, and it's going to be lethal this year. It's all going to come down to their quarterback, Deshaun Watson. Last year, he was clearly rusty when he came back in the middle of the season. He failed to crack 100 yards in a single game and went 3-4 as a starter with 7 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. On top of that, he only completed 58% of his passes. But if he can shake off the rust and play how he's being paid, the Browns are a Super Bowl contender. Not to mention, I love the addition of Elijah Moore at the wide receiver position. They have a potentially elite quarterback, an elite run game, elite offensive line, good receivers, and a good defense. This team has Super Bowl contender written all over it. But now it's time for Deshaun Watson to step up. This leads me to the final team in the AFC North, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Similar to the Browns, they've also been receiving a ton of buzz and hype this offseason, but I'm not buying any of it. This offseason, they added Allen Robinson to give Pickett another weapon on the outside. On the defensive side of the ball, they lost Cameron Sutton, but drafted his hopeful replacement in Joey Porter Jr. out of Penn State. A lot of fans and analysts are banking on the fact that Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season as the Steelers head coach. They're also expecting a Kenny Pickett breakout year after his performance in the preseason. I think this is the worst team in the division, and I don't see enough wins on their schedule to propel them to the playoffs. And I think they have their first losing season with Mike Tomlin ever. I'm not buying any of the Steelers hype. I'm not buying any of the Kenny Pickett hype. The Steelers are going to have an uphill battle this year. With how loaded the AFC is, I see only 2 teams coming out of this division. And I first of all have the Bengals winning this division. And not only winning this division, but I think they're going to tear it up in the playoffs. I think Joe Burrow is going to have an MVP year. He's actually my pick to win the MVP. I think the devastating loss in the AFC Championship last year left a sour taste in this team's mouth all offseason. And I believe this team's going to get back to the Super Bowl. I also think that the Ravens are going to have a phenomenal year. I'm first of all so excited that Lamar Jackson got his money, but also that he has weapons to throw to. I think the Ravens barely lose this division to the Bengals and sneak into the wild card spot. But don't count out this team, as I believe that they're an AFC Championship sleeper. I also believe that Lamar Jackson's going to be top 5 in MVP voting.